good evening, and welcome. Oops. It is time once again for the 11th... Oh, boy. I'm way off. Let me try that again. First, let me plug my headphones in so I can actually hear what's going on. Yeah, we're very professional here. There we go. Hello. Yes, that's me. Hi. Good evening. It is time once again for CU Immigration here on WRFULP, Urbana, 104.5 FM. I will be your host for this evening. My name is Mr. Garza, and I am here to let you know that WRFU is an open forum for the Urbana-Champaign community. Yep. I'd like you to further understand, if you can somehow decipher my garbled English, that views expressed are those of the speakers and are not intended to represent WRFU, UCIMC, or the Urbana Socialist Forum. These views are our own, and by our, in this instance, I mean myself and me and I, me, myself, and I, the three of us, we're going to be the hosts for this evening. Unfortunately, I have no one else to offer you. I apologize, because I'd like to, give you a good show with many guests, but tonight it's just me talking about immigration. What a surprise. That's what we talk about on this show. CU Immigration is also on UPTV. Welcome UPTV, whatever you're called, Urbana Public Television. Yeah, I'm off to a great start. So I should add to the disclaimer that you cannot assume that these views being expressed are those of WRFU, UCIMC, or the Urbana Socialist Forum, or UPTV. These views are our own, and by our I mean blah, 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 and I already said all that. So, as I said, as I meant, as I believe, welcome to you. It is Monday evening. It is starting to get hot out again. Again, you say? Yes, again, I say. It is getting hot out again. It is still August, just the last day of August, so it's not like, not like August, but it's still August, and it's still hot, and it's still summer. And summer means that students are away, although they're now back, I guess, and have been for a week now. But wherever they are, they're not here in the studio being guests, and neither are their professors. So, and neither is anyone else. Neither are anyone else. No one else is either. So it's just me, and that's all you have. Last week's show, it might be a bit delayed in getting on the air, at least on UPTV. It was on the radio, obviously, but there was something garbled about the audio. Yes, sad but true. So we're looking at options for how to fix that. And hopefully we can get that show to the UPTV audiences soon. But in the meantime, hopefully this show will be able to fill in that gap. So, CU Immigration, Monday night, 7 to 8, WRFU, UPTV, we're on the air. Finally. Presidential elections are coming up, believe it or not, in like a year and a half, something like that. But be that as it may, however long in the future it is, they're already running, and some of them are running hard. And in order to pump up their numbers and get people excited and things like that, guess what? They're trashing immigrants. Yes, that's right. So everyone's favorite immigrant trashing presidential candidate, of course, is none other than Donald Trump, the trasher-in-chief. He's elected to be a nativist in this election. He's elected to represent the sort of nativist contingent, I guess you might say, of the GOP, which is kind of their base in a way, but a part of their base anyway. Enough of a part of their base that he's the front runner so far for that political organization. Yes, you heard me right. And in some instances, he is doing more than twice as well with with the likely voters as his nearest competitor. Although I've read today that in Iowa that actually Ben Carson, Mr. Vague, is ahead of him. So we'll see. But in any event, Trump is setting the tone, and the others are either, or rather, no, let me try that again. Trump is setting the tune, and the others are either dancing to it or grumpily stepping off the dance floor because they don't want to. But either way, they're forced to react to it, and that in and of itself makes it news, and it makes it something we need to talk about. So our first story of the day is entitled Trump's Mass Deportation Idea Was Tried in the 1930s. Yeah, you remember that? Let's find out about it. Okay. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump's call for mass deportation of millions of immigrants living in the U.S. illegally, as well as their American-born children, bears similarities to a large-scale removal that many Mexican-American families faced 85 years ago. During the Great Depression, counties and cities in the American Southwest and Midwest forced Mexican immigrants and their families to leave the U.S. over concerns they were taking jobs away from whites despite their legal right to stay. The result? Around 500,000 to 1 million Mexican immigrants and Mexican Americans were pushed out of the country during the 1930s repatriation, as the removal is sometimes called. It's also sometimes called Operation Wetback, in case you are more familiar with that terminology. That nomenclature, I should say. Anyway, during that time, immigrants were rounded up and sent to Mexico, sometimes in public places and often without formal proceedings. Others, scared under the threat of violence, left voluntarily. About 60% of those who left were American citizens, according to various studies on the 1930s repatriation. 60%, more than half, were American citizens. So American citizens were rounded up and sent out of the country because of their ethnicity. Talk about racism. Yep. Later testimonies show families lost most of their possessions and some family members died trying to return. Neighborhoods in cities such as Houston, San Antonio, and Los Angeles became empty. The impact of the experience on Latinos remains evident today, experts and advocates say. It set the tone for later deportations, said Francisco Valderrama, a Chicano studies professor at California State University, Los Angeles. 2 weeks ago, Trump said that, if elected president, he would expand deportations and end birthright citizenship for children born to immigrants who are here illegally. Under his plan, American-born children of immigrants also would be deported with their parents, and Mexico would be asked to help build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. They're illegal, Trump said of U.S.-born children of people living in the country illegally. You either have a country or not. Amid his comments on immigration, and I might want to add, I'll get back to this later, but I might want to add that that is actually incorrect. U.S.-born children of people living in the country, whether legally or illegally, are American citizens. They are not illegal. He would like to make them illegal, but they are not. So he's incorrect, or he's just lying. One of the two. Okay, back to the story. Amid his comments on immigration, polls show negative impressions of Trump among Latinos. A Gallup poll released August 24th found that Hispanics were more likely to give Trump unfavorable ratings than favorable ones by 51 percentage points. What a surprise. Some immigrant advocates pointed to the removal of prominent Latino journalist Jorge Ramos from an Iowa press conference last week as a metaphor for the candidate's desire to remove Latinos from the United States. Quote, Mr. Trump should heed the following warning. Our Latino and immigrant communities are not going to forget the way he has treated them, end quote. The Washington, D.C.-based Fair Immigration Reform Movement said in a statement. Ramos, an anchor for Univision, was escorted out by a Trump aide after Ramos, who had criticized Trump previously, tried to question Trump about his immigration plan. Trump interrupted Ramos, saying he hadn't been called on, and ultimately told Ramos, go back to Univision. Ramos was saying, "You cannot deport 11 million people," as he was escorted away. He was later allowed to return. Trump has provided few details on how his proposed deportation effort would be carried out. The conservative-leaning American Action Forum concluded in a report it would cost between $400 and $600 billion and take 20 years to remove an estimated 11.2 million immigrants living in the country illegally. The large-scale deportation he envisions would be impractical to enact due to the extent to which Mexican immigrants have integrated into U.S. society, said Columbia University history professor May Ngai. U.S.-born children of immigrants have been automatically considered American citizens since the adoption of the Constitution's 14th Amendment in 1868. A Supreme Court ruling in 1898 halted previous attempts to limit the birthright of Chinese American citizens after the passage of the Chinese Exclusion Act. The ruling upheld the clause for all U.S.-born children, Ngai said, and there have been no successful challenges to the clause since. In the 1930s, Balderrama said, officials skirted the issue of birthright citizenship by saying they did not want to break up families. But they did break up families, and many children never saw their parents again, said Balderrama, co-author of a book about Mexican repatriation in the 1930s, with the late historian Raymond Rodriguez, who testified before a California state committee about seeing his father for the last time at age 10, before the father left for Mexico. That legacy lingers in songs, often played on Spanish-language radio stations, that allude to mass deportations and separation of loved ones, said Lillian Soto, an American Studies professor at the University of Wyoming. For example, the lyrics to Ice El Hielo by the Los Angeles-based La Santa Cecilia speak of a community afraid that federal agents about to arrive and launch deportation raids at any moment. The ballad Volver, Volver, sung by Mexican ranchera performer Vicente Chente Fernandez, speaks of someone vowing to return to a lover despite all obstacles. They're about families being apart, Soto said. The lyrics are all indirectly linked to this past. So this is story is copyrighted by the Associated Press, in case you UPTV viewers are interested in it. So where to begin? I'm not even sure how to begin on this. I'm sure, well, I'm not sure, but I feel fairly confident in saying that Trump is using this kind of extreme language as a ploy. I don't think he imagines that he can do this, or I don't think that he's actually thought about it to the extent of trying to figure out how to do it, if you know what I mean. I don't know him, but he's got to be some sort of, he's a businessman, so he's got to have some sort of rational base for how he imagines doing things. So what I think, and this is just pure speculation on my part, is that he's just saying what he thinks people want to hear, or his people, or the people he wants to inspire. He's saying what he thinks they want to hear. And then he knows that later on, when and if it came time to actually try to do something like that, he could bluster about it and say, I promised to do this and we have to try, and then sort of blame Congress when it turns out to be impossible. So I think a lot of presidential promises kind of revolve around this idea that, say something just like, I will balance the budget in a year, or I'll reduce the deficit by half in my first 6 months in office. They're saying something that they can make a kind of, generally logical argument is possible. They can produce facts or figures that say, if this happens, and if this happens, and if that happens, then my promise will be fulfillable, and therefore, and this is what I intend to do. And I don't think they actually intend to do it. I don't think they actually believe that they can do it. I think they just say it because it just makes them more attractive to the audience that they're trying to appeal to. But even so, the fact that you would use something like this, I mean, you could say all sorts of things. You could promise, free pie to everybody and say, oh, when I become president, everyone will have pie. I mean, that's also a very unrealistic thing, even assuming that everyone wanted pie or could agree on what kind of pie they wanted or whatever. That is also realistic, but that's a positive. I'm sorry, that is also unrealistic, but that is at least a positive promise. It's something like, wow, it would be nice if everyone had pie. And that would not hurt anybody except people that are, diabetic or allergic to pie or whatever the thing might be, but they wouldn't have to have it. They could say no. It's just, but for all the people that want it, wouldn't that be great if they had it? It's sort of like a nice, uplifting, positive thing. To go to something negative like this, like, let's get rid of all these people. I don't care if they're good or bad. It doesn't matter. Let's get rid of all of them. That's troubling. That someone would think that was like a dream that they offer and promise to fulfill. And worse than that, that there are enough people that like the idea of that it could make the person promising it a popular person and the front runner in his contest. So I wanted to read this story because I thought, wow, it might be nice to have a little perspective on what that could actually be like and realize that it has been done more or less in a much smaller way already in this country. And the carnage and the damage of it was extensive and severe, and it hurt a lot of people. And so the fact that someone can stand up and say, I am against these people, blanket, all these people. I don't care to know who they are, to understand their stories, to understand their history. It doesn't matter to me. I am just against them. To me, automatically disqualifies them, whatever their reasoning may be. I mean, they can come up with economic reasons. They can come up with, like some sort of pseudo-moral stance saying, well, we have laws and we have to follow our laws, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. I don't care about any of that because those things are not as important as people's personal lives, as their stories, as their reality of their lived experience. Maybe the closest Mr. Trump has ever gotten to quote-unquote illegals is when he tours one of his facilities and he walks by them while they're like cleaning his floors or cooking his food or doing whatever menial tasks his employees are put to, the ones he wouldn't talk to, because obviously if he talked to them, he would know them as people and he wouldn't have this. And maybe all the people that are supporting this and think it's a great idea also don't come any closer to anyone who is here without proper documentation, and so they can't. And let me take that back. Maybe they don't know them, or don't know that they know them, and are incapable of understanding the humanity of someone that they don't know. So they only can understand the humanity of their friends. They're like, well, my friends, they're human beings just like me. But those other people, no, they're not. They're statistics. They're races. They're ethnicities. They're illegals. They're whatever. Suddenly they're lumped into other terms. To me, that's not healthy. That someone could think like that and can be that way. I don't care what group it is, liberals, conservatives, whatever tag you want to put on someone, and just automatically lump them together and say, those people are bad, those people should go away, those people are whatever. That is not a healthy way of thinking. And you can't do that and be someone that I think is even eligible or qualified in any way to be a leader of a country, a state, or a city, or the chess club. I don't care what it is or how small it is. You're not qualified if you can't think of or see people as people. It boggles my mind. Let's move on. Tracking people like packages. Republicans' inhumane immigration ideas. Okay, so we started out talking about Trump's grand vision for deporting 11 million undocumented people. And all the other people that would probably be caught up in that and end up leaving too because of it, because they want to stay with their family, et cetera, et cetera. Just how ridiculous it is. But when I said that even though it's ridiculous, it's driving the debate, at least within the Republican Party, in terms of other candidates wanting to say something that sounds equally powerful or sounds like they've given this some thought too, and this is how they want to deal with it. Because prior to this, the stock Republican phrase was, well, we need to take control of our borders first and enforce our current laws, and then we'll figure that out. We'll put that off. We won't think about it, because they didn't want to give anybody a legal status. So they want the 11 million to remain in the shadows for various reasons. It's good for business. You got a lot of workers who can't complain about how much they're being paid or if they're being paid at all. Blah, blah, blah. A lot of people pay taxes because they're using a fake Social Security number. So they're paying taxes that they're not getting back at the end of the year. So it just all goes into the pot. And they're supporting the rest of us. So there are a number of reasons why having a lot of people here like that who do not have legal status isn't a bad thing from a business perspective or from a Republican perspective, apparently. But that's the way they wanted to talk about it. It was, well, border enforcement first, knowing, of course, that you can't secure the border. There's no way you can. I mean, if you looked at a map recently, it's just not possible. We have this huge border on two sides of our country. You cannot build a fence around all that. You can't put moats and dragons and drones and tanks and people with guns and I don't know what else, lasers or something. I mean, you just can't do it. It's ridiculous on the face of it, but they know that, but they say that because it sounds good. It sounds good. Well, like, secure the borders. No wonder we have all these problems. If you don't, the borders are not secure. So we put more money into enforcement. That's more money, taxpayer money being spent on private industry. That's good for business. Business then gives you big campaign donations. Your supporters and friends can get in on that, and they'll get some more money, and you'll get some money, and everybody gets money, and they're happy. And who cares that it's coming out of the taxpayer's pocket? Because they don't really care about taxes and taxpayers and all that stuff. That's just lip service. Anyway, be that as it may. So that was a great line because everybody used it, except when everybody stopped using it. And they stopped using it because Trump stopped using it, and he started talking outside the box, outside even anything that looks box-like about things. And now you can't go back to those same kind of like, oh, well, first we got to secure the border, and then we'll, blah, blah, blah. You can't do that. Those stock phrases only worked when everybody was saying them, because it sounded like a position. This is our position on immigration. We don't want to go along with it. We don't want it to work. So our position is we'll secure the border first, and then we'll worry about what comes after that. And that was fine till Trump came along, kicked that nice little sandcastle over, and came up with his own wacky rhetoric, which now has forced all the other candidates to respond in some way, to say something. And so this story is about the somethings that they say. So tracking people like packages, Republicans' inhumane immigration ideas. Yeah, nice. So the Republican presidential candidates just can't help themselves on immigration. The subject is a rhetorical sinkhole that, like Donald Trump's mouth, just seems to keep getting bigger, swallowing candidates left and right. Well, right, anyway. Over the weekend, Scott Walker of Wisconsin floated the idea of walling off the Canadian border. He didn't answer the obvious next question. What about our dangerously exposed borders on the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans and the Gulf of Mexico? That means we may soon be hearing from Bobby Jindal or Rick Perry, or Lindsey Graham, who could tell us about the efficacy of coastal blockades in the war of northern aggression. But the prize for weekend loopiness goes to Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey for his bold idea to give FedEx the job of tracking foreigners every minute they are in the United States. Quote, "We need to have a system that tracks you from the moment you come in," end quote. He later said on Twitter, "Don't be ridiculous. He wasn't likening immigrants to packages, although it's hard to see how anyone could have concluded otherwise. That's all FedEx does, move packages around the world on forklifts and conveyor belts and trucks and the cargo bellies of airplanes. Unless FedEx has some enlightened corporate shipping policy that takes account of the humanity and dignity and aspirations of its envelopes and boxes, I'm sticking with my initial assessment. Mr. Christie is being idiotic. The point that seems lost on him is that packages, unlike people, don't have constitutional rights or families. They don't take jobs to support themselves and their children. They don't pay taxes and prop up the agricultural, restaurant, and hospitality industries or keep Social Security and Medicare afloat. They don't revitalize ailing local economies or give the United States the youthful vigor, hopefulness, and energy that other countries with advanced economies and aging populations lack. Because packages aren't human. There is a suggestion, an insinuation, an ugly metaphor that undergirds the Republicans' harsh talk on the immigration problem. It's the idea that unauthorized immigrants are not fully human and do not deserve the rights and protections enjoyed by citizens and legal immigrants. Their illegality is a stain that cannot be erased and must never be forgiven. No amnesty is the Republican rallying cry. These foreigners are not an opportunity for this country. They are a threat that must be resisted by extraordinary means, including building impossible border walls, fully enlisting the state and local police in an expanded federal deportation dragnet, and suspending the parts of the Constitution that guarantee citizenship by birth and forbid unreasonable search and seizure, among other things. Republican immigration policies are not strategies for efficiently handling a needed flow of labor and humanity. They are strategies for containing epidemics and in repelling invasion. Mr. Jindal even used that word. Quote, "Immigration without assimilation is invasion," he said. All right, we have passed the halfway point, so it's too late for me to, well, it's never too late. I'll say it anyway. Since UPTV program ends after a half an hour, and we're past the half an hour point, I will provide a closing here to use for editing purposes, and then a reopening. So you have been listening to CU Immigration here on WRFU LP Urbana 104.5 FM. We'd like to thank you for joining us this week, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye-bye.